Great night. All right, let's get through some of these bios. So some of the people in here already know who's on this panel, some don't. So, and for the audience at home, we definitely want you to check this out. So we'll start with Sandy because he wanted to go first anyway. So Sandy Climan is a producer, investor, and media visionary and CEO of Entertainment Media Ventures. His productions include U2 3D, the first digital live-action 3D film, and The Aviator, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and directed by Martin Scorsese, for which he was awarded a Golden Globe and a British Academy Award.
By the way, I did not put Malibu Bikini Shop and 315 The Moment of Truth on there. They should be there.
There you go. He previously served as part of the senior management at Creative Artists Agency, representing such talent as Robert Redford, Robert De Niro, Kevin Costner, Danny DeVito, and director Michael Mann. Let's give it up for Sandy. All right, we'll go with Michael next. Michael Becker, founder and CEO at Imprint Entertainment. So Michael has 25 years of experience working in the entertainment industry. He began his career as a talent agent representing writers, directors, cinematographers, and producers. Throughout his tenure as an agent, Michael orchestrated numerous high-profile deals for his clients, including working on iconic projects such as Sex and the City, iRobot, The Notebook, Nip Tuck, Panic Room, and The West Wing, among many others. In 2008, Michael founded the production company Imprint Entertainment and has overseen more than $1.8 billion in worldwide box office success. Notable credits under Imprint Entertainment's banner include the Twilight Saga franchise, as well as films such as Stepfather featuring Penn Badgley and Amber Heard, Pawn starring Forrest Whitaker, Ray Liotta, Common, and Michael Chiklis, and The Vault starring James Franco, Taryn Manning, and Worth starring Michael Keaton and Stanley Tucci. Let's give it up for Michael. All right, Jeff's next. Last but not least, Jeff Bowler, Emmy Award-winning film and television producer. Jeff is a producer and financier with a diverse career in the entertainment industry. He began as the director of business development for Bandai, then served as vice president of business development at WWE, where he helped launch WWE Films and co-produced the Mummy franchise and The Scorpion King. From 2012 to 2017, Jeff was head of acquisitions and production for The Exchange, contributing to over 100 films, including Dear White People and Two Guns. He created the hit TV series Inked in 2005 and has produced over $250 million in films and more than 300 hours of television content as co-owner of Wonder Film Media. Let's get it up for Jeff.
By the way, Jeff is also Platinum Dunes. So, there's an extraordinary success rate, of the partnering with Michael Becker.
Yeah, there is. It's a different side of the business. It's actually interesting to see, because I work on the studio side, like Sandy said, but also on this independent debt side as well, and two very different businesses.
All right, so my goal here tonight is these guys are full of stories, and this is going to be a lot of fun. And just to let you know, I'm going to start us off, and we have a bunch of questions we're going to go through, but this is fireside chat style. So have some questions. I'm definitely going to open it up for everybody else to be able to answer some questions too, and then we're going to hang out after as well. So we got a lot to cover, but just to get us kicked off, so we hear stories, we've been talking about today, investing in films. What does entertainment look like going in the future? We hear stories about winning big, losing big in films. Where does the panel want to start? Where do we want to start with this one?
It's a lot easier to lose big than win big, for sure, in the film business. My very first movie, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago or so, me and my friend, he put up $2 million, I packaged the movie, and we thought you just make a movie and it makes money. It's definitely not how it works. We ended up selling the movie for $1 million, my friend lost $1 million, and from that point on I was like, I need to figure out the business of film financing, the business, how this all works, distribution, sales, all that stuff, the financing, a finance plan, something that makes sense going into it. And ever since then, running the sales company, The Exchange, for almost 7 years, really taught me the business behind filmmaking. And knowing the numbers, right? You have to know the numbers, you have to know your value of your films. When you put together a package, you can't invest in a $10 million film if it's only worth $2 million on its bad day, right? We always, at least on the independent finance side, we always invest and make our decisions based on what's the worst case scenario movie X is worth. And then you deduct 20%, and then that's kind of where we'll finance, and that's how we've been working. But there's a lot of people that will spend $10 million on a film that's worth $1 million, and they'll lose 9, and they should have asked us first. And I get a lot of those calls now, especially with this guy right there. But on the winning side of it, our new debt fund that we're putting together it de-risks, but it also kind of caps your ceiling. So we're not swinging the fences. It's singles and doubles, and it's kind of safety, safety first. And if something that we lend against hits, we have maybe a small upside. One of Michael's friends who just did an independent film, Long Legs. That was exactly it. They came in finishing funds for like $250,000 on a finished movie that they can see that was really good, that had distribution, and they were the first money back. But they didn't get a lot of back end. But the film did go on to make $100 and something million, so their $250 ended up making them like $5 million. It's a rare case, but that's kind of the model that we're working under.
So you mentioned a couple of things, finishing funds, and maybe I want to just take a step back if it's okay with everyone, and I want to do a little bit of a primer here, because there's a lot of investors here that maybe haven't invested in film or entertainment specifically. They've invested maybe in other alternatives. So when we talk about finishing funds or development, can whoever'd like to pick this one up, walk us through that process of what it looks like to make a movie.
Can I ask you a question?
Not yet.
No, not yet. Is the fund still open or is the fund closed?
It's open for probably another 60 days. You can have
As they stand up and he's like, can we continue this conversation? Finish the panel first, then you can continue the conversation.
Michael, we'll talk about finishing funds a little bit more and kind of the different types of financing that we will do.
Or just even the process, though, of making a movie. Let's take a step back there.
That's different than finishing funds. There's so many different ways to get movies made. You could have a rich uncle, just write a check and you'll probably lose that money. That's called equity. That's not the smartest thing to do. But typically coming from the independent side, early in my career, we would find just a script. Then we'd go find the right director. And then we would go find the right actor, and then put together some financing, a mix of equity and debt.
And it's still done that way. I mean,
but we
it's
take a long time now. We
right.
just look for packages that are ready to go,
That's right.
and we just look at, and so we can do a quick analysis on the worldwide value, and we can say yes or no. But a lot of people, still put together movies that way in development,
Right.
and it takes time and it costs money.
And it's a little bit different too on the independent side as far as than the studio side. We kind of work in both those worlds, but on the independent side with the senior lending, it's the senior lending is great because it's essentially, for the most part, it's last money in and first money out, and all you're doing is banking collateral. You're banking collateral essentially. People are going out, they're selling the movie to different territories around the world, and they're getting contracts for those, and but they want that money to be able to make their movie for part of their financing. That's where we come in. We come in and we bank those contracts. Lending institutions will take them, but it's sometimes a little complicated. It's a long process. We can move pretty fast on those, and the equity and the gap lending and those are tax credits. Those all come into play as well in somebody's financing structure, but ultimately, it's the senior lending is really, I like to look at it as you're banking somebody's invoice that they have, and as soon as the movie's delivered, the territory pays back. So for us, the movie doesn't necessarily have to be a smash hit. It doesn't really need to make money for the equity investors, we get our money back when the movie delivers. And so it's...
Yeah, we're one part of getting a movie made for a filmmaker. We've all three have made a lot of movies.
Let me make a couple of comments. Firstly, it's great to see everybody here. And I actually just want to commend Mission Matters and actually going IPO, because ultimately where it starts is storytelling. And storytelling is now part of every business, including finance. By the way, if you've ever dealt with investment bankers, you've ever dealt with anyone in any part of the financial industry, today storytelling is critical to almost every business. And these are companies that are actually promoting high quality storytelling. From an investor's point of view, you've got to then dig in as to whether the story has merit. So, the question as to how movies are made is, there's no answer to that. It can be done any number of different ways. And what I would say from an investor's point of view, I give you just one sense, and there, what Jeff and Michael are talking about is one level of de-risking. So they're talking about finishing funds, they're talking about, even if the film loses money, they may make money with this model. Doesn't mean they will, but they likely could, because they've basically analyzed it at that. If you're looking at the whole business in its entirety, and you want to look at it from a holistic point of view, because equity doesn't necessarily mean you lose money. The exercise of the industry is to look at creative excellence and whatever that means. We'll talk about that in 30 seconds. And then sort of an appropriate capital structure for what you're doing. It's no different than anything else. Now, where you come in the capital structure, so if you look at, I remember one of the most compelling discussions of capital structure was Canyon Partners' investment in Caesars Entertainment. And at that point, when Apollo had actually bought the company for a ridiculous amount of money, at $100 a share, and it was collapsing right after. The question was, who in the capital stack lost money? And actually, the Canyon people, Josh Friedman, knew most of the other investors. Not all of them had read their documents. But the trick with a company or with a film is to understand the devil is in the details. When I was at CAA, the devil's in the details as to who makes how much money and under what circumstances. The biggest caution to anyone even looking at the entertainment industry is it's largely been based, unlike any other business, particularly venture businesses, where your success as an entrepreneur rides with the success of the company and the venture. In film, the trick is to transfer as much capital and money into your own pocket no matter how the project works out, which is unfortunately how the business has always worked. So when someone comes up and says, I don't say hello for less than $4 million, you say goodbye. And that is a way to do it. But at the end of the day, you've got the idea, you've got stars, you've got directors, and then the bottleneck of how it gets from finance to the audience. And while I'm not going to go into this now, we may do it later if people are interested. It's whether it's Wayne Gretzky or some other great hockey player, skate to where the puck's going, not where it is, because the business is changing. So what is it today, Monday? Does anybody know what films are opening this weekend? If I asked that question 5 years ago and you actually paid attention to the industry, you would know exactly what films were opening this weekend. You have no idea. And if it's Barbie and it's Oppenheimer and you're in a Barbenheimer weekend or something, yes. But it used to be that a studio would take a roadblock of ABC, NBC, CBS, and eventually Fox at 9 o'clock on Thursday, and everybody had it on their agenda as to what was going on. And the diversity of how people are finding films, you have a generational issue of people going to the movies. I was just at a conference and someone said, I was talking to my 23-year-old son, they said they don't go to, their 13-year-old, and they said they don't go to the movies at all. I said the problem is at 23 they may not either. And what you have right now is so much competing for people's time, so much attention, and what you want to do is to figure out what the bottlenecks are, what the new methodologies for getting people into theaters will be, and then hopefully you find both creative genius and on a budget that generates a significant profit depending, no matter where you are in the capital stack. The exercise in terms of finishing films is taking advantage. it's not taking advantage, it's helping people finish their project, but making an appropriate economic deal at a time people may need the money and are willing to make a specific kind of economic return for getting their project done. Most of you will not, that's one way to invest. Most of you will be encountering things earlier in the process and with a different particular opportunity set in terms of investment.
So if we're skating to where the puck is, how do we decide on what you're going to invest in for the fund?
I mean, for us, it's pretty simple. It just comes down to metrics and discipline. We have a formula. We have our internal sales team. Think of them as like a home appraiser. They do an appraisal on every film. So every film with a certain actor or director has a certain value of worst case and then best case. Not best case, worst case and moderate success. And then what we do is we will lend 70% loan to value on the worst case numbers. That's basically, that's the most we'll do.
But you're also not lending 70% of the budget. You're lending
No,
70%. You've got whatever
Yeah.
the slug is, and then you're looking at the valuation.
Yeah, so then, the filmmakers will have to come up with the other 30% with either equity, tax credits, something. But there was an example. I got pitched this movie called Meet Cute with Kaylee Cuoco and Pete Davidson 2 years ago, and the whole budget was $3 million. And the numbers were 6 on the worst case, but they needed money tomorrow. And it's hard to come up with an extra $3 million tomorrow without doing due diligence and all that stuff. But I knew someone else who they were going to call next. It was my old company, The Exchange. They called the next person wrote the check. They were in production by Friday. They sold the film for $22 million. And that's where you can win big, but you have to move fast. But we would have done that deal if we had for 2 weeks to do our due diligence and make sure the bond and everything was in place. Because the worst case it was a Kaylee Cuoco, Pete Davidson, great romantic comedy that would have sold for at least 6. And it would have been great.
But I'll give you a couple of quick examples, because ultimately what is being discussed here, and Jeff is right, is you have to if you are going to invest in real estate, you know that they're going to send you the worst deals when you're new until you figure out what a good deal is. And you have to know, you got to do due diligence because you can be dealing with out-and-out thieves. And I'll give you 2 good examples. So worst case scenario, I'm in MGM, and they want to make a film which is like Dawn of the Mummy, and it had a bunch of penthouse pets in it. And I would think I was in distribution, and one of the young production executives and I are analyzing this, and they're saying, the pets will come over and pitch you the movie. And I'm going, there's just something wrong here, and let's not do this. At which point we didn't, and they ran out of money, they ran out of water, they had lawsuits for actually dehydrating the actor. It was a mess.
Wow.
But if someone came to you and said, we're going to make a movie on the 1924 British Olympic track team, and it's going to be, you got the Jewish guy who doesn't want to be Jewish and becomes the grand old man of British sport. You got the Scottish missionary who won't run on the Sabbath. You got Lord Lindsay who might be gay and is going to do hurdles. And you got this Greek composer no one's ever heard of and a director no one's ever heard of named Hugh Hudson. Every studio passed on Chariots of Fire. Every studio. I watched the film and they passed. And Ladd Company picked it up because Sandy Lieberson in London had taken it for Fox International where they thought they could do better. And the Ladd Company picked it up when I had to watch John Goldwyn, who was Laddie's driver, at an Oscar party I threw, stand on a chair for 11 Academy Awards and scream every time it won an Academy Award. Everybody passed. So in the end, I was with Glenn Basner about 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about Anora. And he had such faith in Sean Baker. He said, well, the money, we would have done it off our balance sheet. Normally they would de-risk the film, but he said, in this particular case, if we had to, we would have done it because we know him, we know where it's going. And again, if you have people who are in the middle of the business as opposed to peripheral to the business, and that has something to do with who you guys will back as well, the likelihood is they can make the calls that at least will get the potential for distribution will be higher than people no one's ever heard of who are trying to meet people for the first time.
Yes, absolutely.
And to Sandy's point, the film has to be great. I mean, for us to, we definitely like to come in, take a look at the whole project, make sure that it's commercial appealing. But again, we're only taking a small portion of the financing. We're just taking the senior lending out of it. We're not coming in with the equity. We're not coming in with the gap lending. We're literally just taking the banking portion for the producers to go off and make it. Now we'll try to help them if they are looking for distribution. We don't want to be associated with a lot of bad projects, even if we are making money. We like to be associated with the Chariots of Fire and all the other the Noras and great projects. But ultimately for us, it's just that portion of the senior lending, or it could be finishing funds, it could be tax credits, it could be even any type of collateralized debt in the project.
Well, going back to your question on how movies get made, there's there is, like Sandy said, there's no exact way. There's no exact way. But one thing that you guys might find interesting, one of the terms we use, development, which could be hiring a writer, buying an option to a book, development. So we're in the business of looking at packages that are ready to go next month, the month after, and we just make a decision. But there are passion projects that we both get involved in, and they cost, development money, and it's not cheap a lot of times. And for example, myself and my partner Michael Becker have a movie at Universal, and they told us to go find a writer. It's an original story that he and we actually bought the rights to a book. And they said, go find a writer, so we found this writer. Universal paid him $1 million, and the script is terrible. And, that would put us out of business if we were to finance development independently. That's one movie, $1 million. We're looking for the next writer right now, in case there's any in the room. We've got $750 to pay the next guy, or girl. So, but again, on the indie side, especially this debt fund that we're putting together, we can't be in the business of development. But, to Sandy's point, storytelling, it all starts with great stories. And the people that take the risk on the development ultimately make those great movies, mostly. But it is a big risk independently. And, even the studios are getting less and less in the development business. They want to see spec scripts from A-list writers that just write them on their own. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask one more question here, and then I want to open it up to the room, and like I said, get everybody else involved as well. So you mentioned real estate, and I see kind of the connection. So I'm going to throw this one to you, Michael. Are these collateralized, like the movies? Like, explain a little bit of the technical side of what that looks like if somebody defaults.
Sure. On the independent finance side, the producer will go work with the sales company, international sales company, and take the film out. Let's say they've got a movie with Nicolas Cage. The sales company knows what Nicolas Cage is worth in all the different territories for that specific genre of picture. And they'll give them Germany will pay a certain amount, and they're pretty steady with the numbers. So, and they'll take it out and they'll sell it to every single territory around the world. They'll do contracts on those. They'll bring them to us to finance because they want to use the money for the production. So ultimately, if they do default, it comes in where the production finishes the film, turns it into that company in Germany that bought it, and they're no longer in business. So, and in that case,
That's why there are letters of credit.
yeah. So it does happen. We also use we require a bond company for the most part. The bond company doesn't necessarily.
Bond company.
So a bond company is an insurance company essentially that comes in that says that looks over your production, digs through it, and says, okay, you're making this for $10 million. That's fine, and they oversee the production to make sure it gets delivered on time. The big problem is if somebody goes over budget or and they don't have enough money to finish the film. So they'll sit there, they'll analyze it, they come on board, and they bond it. It's like an insurance policy for your film.
we require that in order, because for us, we're looking at to make sure that the film is actually delivered. If the film's delivered to that territory, we get paid. If it's not delivered and it goes over budget, it can become a problem. We have a first position lien on the film, so we could essentially, if they do default, it's worst things in the world, but we actually own the film until we take it out and then can monetize it, which isn't, can be a good thing too, but not really for the filmmaker. So, I mean, for us as a debt fund maybe. Yeah, so the bond company is an insurance company that we use to make sure that the production stays on budget and on time.
Just a couple of other quick comments. The bond company, if it actually takes over a movie, which you generally don't let it, they're not really interested in quality. They're interested in
true.
technical
Just
delivery.
delivering it.
So the aesthetic quality may suffer as opposed to them just shooting the words on the page and calling it a day, which could also impact how the film is received by the people who bought it. But if I were going to give you one piece of advice as to how you think about film investing, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. One is you've got too much money and you want to have some fun. And that's okay. I have a lot of friends who actually do films that way, and they do not mind losing money if they enjoy the trip. You can look at it the way that Jeff and Michael are talking as well, which is do you want to do it as a business, and where in the capital structure you do it. And you can look at it from a financial modeling point of view, and that's another way to do it. There's nothing wrong with that. You can also do it from another perspective, which is, I believe in these filmmakers, and I'm going to back them because I think that creatively, as well as in terms of how they handle their business, they're good people to back. So instead of being omnivorous and looking at everything that comes in the door that fits a model, you're looking at a specific creative element. It could be a genre, it could be a director, and say, like Michael Bay. Michael Bay's got this enormously successful track record. And there's a lot to be said for that. I would encourage, and again, each one comes with a different level of engagement on your part. In the sort of sense of Mission Matters, I mean, Adam's giving out poker chips. If anybody really cares, I actually have a Dropbox with the last 12 years of nominated scripts, because when the academies decided to send them out electronically, I said, let's just drop them in a Dropbox. So if anybody wants access to read a bunch of scripts, read the scripts, because sometimes it helps to actually know what something looks like on paper, and then what it looks like when you make it, and what changes and what visions. I mean, I remember in Witness, I was working for David Gerber at the time, and we passed on Witness because David read the script, and he said, I made this on Police Story. And so it was. And when you think about that film, and you think about barn raising, in the script it says barn raising. I have watched entire orchestras live against that scene, which is 15 minutes in the film, which is one of the most beautiful, epic moments in the film, or when Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis are dancing in front of the car's headlights. Those are, the film itself is very much Police Story. It ends with a shootout in a granary. But everything in between is based on the genius of the director, the actors, the editing, and the fact that they knocked it out of the park creatively.
Yeah.
All right, let's open it up for questions.
Thank you three and Trog and Adam. A de-risk question and a Wayne Gretzky play to where the puck is going question. I presume that sales companies are all kind of using the same sort of data, or in this age, metadata.
Yeah.
So just hypothetical, set the volleyball for you. Could you utilize better metadata to outpace Comerica and its other bank syndications for debt, as well as just de-risk in the sense of less and less opacity for potentially equity participants, not just debt purchases? I think a lot of things come down to data. Obviously, Netflix holds its data very close, but as financial providers towards creatives, if you're providing data for the creatives, for the investors, for distributors, but at a faster pace, at a less opaque pace, like, has that ever crossed your mind? I ask that also because Mission Matters I know them through all the technology entrepreneurs.
You know, there's not really there's not a database of, you know, it's funny because the sales and distribution in these countries is still phone calls. It's very archaic. You know, I'm not aware of any, you know, technology. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that track local box office and stuff, ancillaries and all that stuff. But, you know, it's the sales teams, they still just call the buyer in that country and say, what did you pay as a license fee for the last $10 million Nicolas Cage movie? And they'll be like, the same as we paid the year before. And, you know, the market's changed a lot in the last 5 years. And I was talking to Sandy earlier, you know, we used to sell Nicolas Cage action movies. We'd make them for 8 to 10, we'd sell them for 12. And we know the margin, and we'd do 5 a year. And it was a nice business. And now those same films are selling for $4 million. And you can't make them for $4 million because you got to pay the star $3 million. And, you know, and so those movies.
Maybe.
Yeah. And now that the bottom has fallen out on those movies. Now it's back to quality, you know. But to your comment, like on, you know, Comerica, Bank of California, and we work with them in another business, in the studio business. But on the independent side, you know, it's a long time to close with commercial banks. And the film packages that we see, like Meet Cute, you know, you don't have 3 months to do a closing with a bank. So that's why you come to lenders like us, or we you know, for years we were the borrowers. We borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars over the years at 20%, sometimes more. So, you know, with my background in sales and distribution and the numbers, I was like, Michael, we should probably go on the other side of the business and become the bank and lend out to all the other filmmakers. It also creates jobs. It creates, you know, a family. And we maybe discover some new filmmakers that we really back and we believe in, and maybe there's some type of equity participation that we look at fund number 2 for certain specific, you know, movies. But there is no, that I'm aware of, no technology that we use. It's just pick up the phone and, you know, what will you pay?
But, you know, the question about data and where the business is going is the right question. It's early, but it's the right question.
Absolutely.
And, you know, by the way, at least they're borrowing from you. I have one for Sandy Howard. I remember there's one great story. Now, you guys don't know Sandy Howard. He did very bad, low-budget movies in the 1970s and 60s. And my friend Dick St. John's, he called him. He had just left the meeting because he had actually gotten the film financed by the New York mob. And it was not going well. And he had left the meeting with, I forget which mob bosses, and he was at a payphone, and he said, what do I do, Dick? And he said, you get on a plane, you don't go back to the hotel, you just come back to California now. So, you know, films get financed all kinds of ways. But the thing about data is this, and you talk about where the business is going. Firstly, it used to be that there were stars. Now, people say Tom Cruise is maybe one of the last stars, but it used to be if you were in a movie, you could open the movie because people would go to see who it was. There's fewer and fewer of those opportunities. Television's got smarter. It's actually about to get dumber again, which is a longer discussion. Because if you look, the top streaming series are out of the top, I forget how many, most of them are old TV series. And there are lots of reasons for that. People love it. One, they're closed-ended. 2, there's a reason they made 100 or 200 episodes. They had to be good at something. 3, you know, when you're done with, I mean, if we were just talking about this earlier, if I didn't get an email that I read that said White Lotus 3 was opening Sunday night, I might think it was happening 2 years from now because who remembers? So you've got these series that are 6 or 8 episodes. They're really brilliantly done, which may be too taxing for some people too. If you don't watch every episode, you know, you don't know what you're watching, as opposed to Seinfeld, which you can watch them out of order. And 3 is that, you know, it's 18 to 24 months between seasons, and I don't know when those dragons are coming back.
Yeah.
But what I would say is this, is that the biggest impediment to movies is although these days, and just talking with Neon about this and Film Nation, you can now open movies for $8 million before you spend 20, but you still have to spend a lot of money to open them. It used to be you would ask what somebody's Q score was, which today is how many how many followers you have. And the question is, social media is becoming that much more important. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to be able to, with data, target moviegoers who are amenable to a certain type of film, coalesce them, turn them into a community rather than an audience, market to them, and if you reverse engineer the economics of the production to meet that size of that audience, you're almost guaranteed a profitable business, which we're not there yet. But I'll give you an example. If you've been flying JetBlue or certain other airlines, there's an A24 shot. And the fact that people identify an A24 audience is one step away from being able to monetize an A24 audience.
Yeah, you've got the A24s, you got like even Blumhouse that's coming out, so they they'll target, that's what you said, they'll target their audience, and they're doing a really good job.
You nailed it. We have a movie, so I'll plug the movie. It's called Drop. The trailer came out a few weeks ago, and it comes out April 11th with Universal. And when Universal gave us the trailer, it was seen by 100-something million people in the first 48 hours. And they sent us the data, and 76% of those views came from TikTok.
From?
TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Targeted.
Yeah, targeted. I was like, wow, 76% came from TikTok. And I went on the YouTube where Universal, on their YouTube channel when they put it out, and Blumhouse, our partner on theirs, I'm like, okay, 10 million there, 10 million there. And then Universal was like, it was 117 million. So, wow.
And if people speak favorably about it, I mean, most music discovery, in the absence of TikTok, the music business changes its economics, which is kind of crazy. And we're going to see new platforms launched, but the nature of how information is shared can hurt you or help you, but it's essential at this point.
Yeah, my name is Dave Bianchi. I recently just created a series. I'm the writer, creator, executive producer. Was nominated for a Primetime Emmy, and currently have it's all good, thank you. And we currently have 2 feature films that are currently being sold at EFM as we speak. Completed feature films. So, from a domestic perspective and from a foreign perspective, when it comes to debt financing, number one, what are the premiums? Are you buying them 92 cents on the dollar? That's one. I think one important question probably people are interested in is that also domestic and also foreign. I mean, Budapest is doing a lot of that kind of stuff as long as it's liquid, I would imagine. The other question is. I'd like to make sure I connect with you guys.
Yeah, sure.
So I
We'll
can
connect
learn.
after.
I can take it?
answer that, yeah.
So
We can do 100%.
yeah, I mean, there's a couple different things. So it's a little bit different. So if you've already finished the film and you're taking it out and selling it, that's sort of a different stage than we're at. We're more on the, as you start, but
We could lend against domestic.
yeah, totally. We could loan against domestic, absolutely. And then in each territory, if you were loaning on the tax credit, yeah, that's probably 89 cents or something on the dollar or something around there. But ultimately on foreign paper, I mean it's a percentage rate that we charge. So it could be it just depends on the particular project, where we're at.
And
But
who the buyer is.
Who the buyer.
Sky in the UK, you do a sale for, $2 million. We're okay probably doing, 1.9.
yeah, and we will loan 100% as well on it. So Sky's good. Sky's really good. Paper. They've been around. It's
Like we're
A-list.
going to be working with Amazon on this as well. Amazon's going to be a partner in this. And we're going to be cash flowing a lot of their paper for their productions. But they were great, they're AAA credit. So.
Amazon International.
Yeah.
They do the same thing. And you a lot of times Amazon will pick
Amazon's
up.
gonna be around?
For a bit.
I don't know. So Amazon will do the same thing though. They'll take it out and they sell different territories around the world. They finance the same way. They have a sales team. They lay it off in different countries and they need somebody to bank the paper as well. So.
All right, last question, and then we'll hang out and keep talking. Yeah.
So when it comes to production of making the things, right, we may know it costs a lot of money, and we've seen in the last 20 years a lot of production going overseas because it's cheaper to sell than in the market. The cost of labor is cheaper, but given that entertainment historically has been one of America's biggest exports, And Hollywood is Hollywood, you know, for a reason, and there's magic to that and all of that. Yet, more and more we've seen production leave America as a whole, certainly California, certainly Los Angeles. And now on the other side of the fires, there's a lot of conversations about this push of staying in LA and keeping production here, and how do we do that in a way that makes economic sense. Since obviously the cost of shooting here is astronomical because of union rates and all of that. So I guess I'm just curious to your thoughts and any like off the top of your head suggestions on how we can continue to create a sustainable business. Certainly everyone wants to profit, whether financially or ethically or emotionally, for whatever their why is, they decide to invest in film. But nurturing and supporting and incubating the pipeline of talent that's here behind the scenes as well is just as important to turning a buck and making that ROI and investing in the future of the industry. So it's a very esoteric question, but how do you solve that,
It's we talk about this all the time. We would love to work here in LA. I can't tell you the last time I made a movie here. I don't know, maybe it's been 7, 8 years. But I mean, unfortunately, I know they're talking about raising the ceiling to $750 million a year, but it's still not a big percentage of a tax credit. Yeah. So you could call it $2 billion a year, but if you can still get 30% in Georgia, and it's only 15 or whatever it is here now, and there's a lottery, you have to apply for the lottery, and all of the lottery tickets are going to all the network television shows. And I just don't see it being fixed anytime soon until we make that change. The state and the city and the county to be proactive to keep talent at home and nurture that pipeline. It's unfortunate, but it's unfortunate because I've shot a couple of movies recently in Mississippi. Their economy needs it more than Los Angeles' economy, and they got really aggressive to bring us there. It was a Morgan Freeman movie, and I think we got 30% of the tax credit. Then if one of your 3 stars is a war veteran, you get another 10%. Morgan's a Mississippi resident, so we ended up getting over 40%. So it helped our small movie. So we, as the 200 people on the team, could get that movie made and created 200 jobs. And I just don't see California making that change anytime soon.
You've got a very, very, very specific question, which is why are things leaving? And it's not that. You can't really look at it. On a positive side, we're on a global platform today. And there are extraordinary businesses set up all around the world. And effectively, when you're looking at whether you are a major studio or you're an independent company, you're going to do the following calculus. Where do I need to shoot it? If I'm shooting in a desert, I'm not going to shoot it in Canada. And if I'm going to shoot, Brooklyn, it's going to be Toronto as opposed to Saudi Arabia or Dubai. But you're going to look at where you need to shoot it. You're going to look at what the incentives are. So here, I don't think they give above the line incentives here, which is probably the biggest impediment in terms of a rebate. You're going to look at, are there local crews that are good, or do I have to import them, and what is the cost of importing a crew if I have to do that? You're going to look at equipment and say, okay, and you've got, Manhattan Beach Studios and Hackman, they can move lighting equipment around the world at the drop of a hat. You're going to say, okay, what equipment do I need to move? And you're going to do a creative and an economic model, and then you're going to figure out where you can go. And then the only impediment to that is somebody who actually matters says, I don't want to be there. And, so if you're going to shoot at some remote location, you will look at the safety of your crew, because there are places that are now too dangerous to shoot because of street crime and other instabilities. You're going to look at, is it a fun place to be, which could be Dubai. And frankly, as an example, technology will be an added factor there. So Saudi Arabia is about to open the most advanced light stage in the world in Riyadh. So they bought Sony's new technology in partnership with Sony. And Pixamondo, which is Sony's company that they acquired, will be staffing it. And you're going to be comparing what the costs are to shoot in Riyadh versus somewhere else with the most advanced technology in the world. And the difference between Riyadh and remote locations is other than the fact that eventually you'll be able to drink in restaurants you can't really drink in restaurants, there's something fun going on literally every week in Riyadh. I mean, it's festival, music, whatever. And it's not the Saudi Arabia that people have in their stereotype. It's kind of really a fun place. So you will look at all those factors and make a decision.
All right, well, let's give it up for the panel.